Good morning. In today's short but powerful parable, we see a number of beautiful lessons. We see the goodness of this father who represents God the Father, giving his sons a job in the vineyard. We see the tension between saying and doing, between intentions and actions. And we see that there's a gradual nature of spiritual growth and conversion when we look at the parable carefully. So I'd like to just briefly reflect on these three themes. First of all, we see the goodness of the Father. So the story is about a father who invites each of his sons to come and work in his vineyard. And what you notice is there's an absence of any type of nagging or coercion. This father doesn't partner with heavy-handed tactics or with shame. He respects his son's freedom. The father is not a harsh taskmaster. He wants his sons to be sharers in the family business. He's trying to raise them to be contributing members of the household economy and not to be entitled brats. He's giving them a job in the vineyard, and it's not seen as a burden, but rather it's a gift and a blessing to collaborate in this way. So he appeals to his sons' goodwill and not to their sense of fear. Notice the insolence and the entitlement in the first son. In a patriarchal culture, this would have been especially pronounced. For him to simply say to his father, "No, I will not," flat out refuse, without any type of softening the blow, without any type of explanation, just no. The father isn't rattled. He doesn't go off on the son for disrespecting him. Instead, he takes it and he moves on. So we see a good father who invites his sons to be collaborators in the vineyard. Second thing we see is this tension between saying and doing, between appearance and reality, between intentions versus actions, which, as we know, are two very different things. The parable shows a deep wisdom, and I think a rather profound understanding of humanity. We're all, to some degree, people of contradictions. The two sons, in reality, live inside each of us. Even on our best days, there's deep down a lurking temptation to refusal and laziness, like the first son. Even on our worst days, there is a conscience. There's a sense of right and wrong that can help make us do a U-turn and respond to God's will with obedience and respect after we've had some time to ponder and reflect. The first son obviously had this change of heart. Maybe he felt some pangs of shame as the day progressed and he was doing his own thing, and he considered his father's reasonable request. He may have been in the middle of his own pursuits and thought, what kind of son am I? Here my father is good and reasonable. He's always provided for me. And then when he invites me to come and work in the vineyard, I just told him to go and buzz off. This is not the kind of man or son that I want to be. He said no with his lips, but later his actions said yes. Meanwhile, the second son was eager to please, but in the end his promise was empty. He talked the talk, but his talk in the end was cheap. He didn't follow through. He said yes with his lips, but with his actions, he said no. So there's a profound lesson here for us. And again, we live this tension day to day, week to week, sometimes even hour to hour. Finally, I think the parable teaches us that there's this gradual nature of spiritual growth and conversion, that this thing is a process. The story is not finished. It wasn't finished when the father made his initial request to the sons and they gave their initial answers. And neither is it finished for you or for me, wherever we're at in our spiritual journey. God isn't through with us. And that, to me, is a very comforting thought. What patience God shows as we make our way through the complexities of this life and all its choices and opportunities. What patience God shows us as we waver so much, saying yes for some days and seasons and no for others. We're so fickle. And yet the love of God, the invitation of God, the patience of God is constant. What a bundle of contradictions we can all be if we're honest. And yet, God never holds it against us. He doesn't say something and sarcastic and snarky to the first son when he sheepishly arrives at noon or whenever it was in his work clothes. He doesn't send him away saying, "No, you do your own thing, you ingrate. Serves you right for refusing me this morning." That's not the kind of father that we have. In my ministry, I've seen people of great promise and devotion grow complacent and fall away. Sadly, it happens. And I've seen rebellious and self-centered people experience great conversion and end up becoming incredibly devoted workers in God's vineyard. As a priest, I sometimes feel like I'm in the most at-risk category because as a young man, I said yes to God with all my heart. I tried to be like that second son, giving an immediate and thorough yes to God. And at times, I'm tempted to fall back on that and think, that's enough. I'm tempted to pat myself on the back and enjoy the respect and esteem of my privileged position and say, I'm one of the good guys. I can rest easy and I can even look down on those others who couldn't be bothered. Well, it's not enough. Just because I said yes all those years ago, I still got to wake up this morning and tomorrow morning and the next morning and say yes to God and say yes to you, the flock that I've been given a sacred trust to take care of. My initial yes means I started well, but it doesn't assure that I will end well. To end well, I have to keep going back to that first yes, that first fervor, that first love, and keep saying yes again and again, even when it's hard, even when I might not feel like it, because I gave my word to God and I want to not only say yes to God, but to do yes. You know, even a very virtuous and devoted Catholic can end up saying no. Even a very lazy and selfish person can end up saying yes and reporting for work in the Father's vineyard, even if it's 5 p.m. and the shift ends at 6, as we heard in last week's parable. So God lets this drama play out, and he gives us time to come around. He gives us the opportunities to make U-turns. Thank God for that. So God's patient with us, and we need to be patient with ourselves, but not too patient, because none of us is assured of how many more days we've got. None of us knows when the Lord will come and take us before his judgment seat. And so, which one are you? Which son are you? Which am I? Let's let the parable challenge us. And let's be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable as we ponder this question. Which one am I? Let's pray that we'll be people of integrity whose words and promises will match our actions and our behavior. Let's be people who not only say yes to our Father's loving invitation, but also do yes.